So, thinking about a trip to Dublin, maybe you've heard of Temple Bar and wondering, is it worth the hype or should you avoid it?
Well, the thing is, it really depends on who you ask. You'll hear very different opinions from locals and tourists, wouldn't you?
Right, so let's break that down. What are we hearing from each side?
Well, for a lot of Dubliners, Temple Bar is seen as a bit of a tourist trap,
Yeah?
overpriced and crowded. But on the other hand, it pulls in a massive 3.5 million visitors every year.
Wow, 3.5 million. Clearly, something's drawing people in.
Right. So, what is it about Temple Bar that keeps people coming back, even with the criticisms?
Yeah, and is it just the pubs themselves? Or is there something more to it?
I think it taps into a certain image of Ireland that many tourists are looking for.
You mean that romanticized,
Yeah.
almost picture postcard idea of Irish pub culture?
Exactly. That lively, boisterous atmosphere with traditional music. It's like a concentrated dose of Ireland of the postcards, if you will.
I see, so it's playing into those expectations. Could you even say it's a curated experience?
Absolutely. And for some visitors, that's exactly what they want. They're
Yeah.
looking for that kind of themed, almost theme park version of Irishness.
Okay, that makes sense. But even if it is catering to a specific image, there must be some standout attractions within Temple Bar. What are some of the draws beyond the general atmosphere?
Well, take the Temple Bar pub itself. It boasts over 450 Irish whiskeys.
450. That's incredible.
It's more than just a pub, it's a statement, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. It reflects that global interest in Irish whiskey.
Right. And there's the James Joyce statue outside, so you're getting that literary connection too.
Ah, so it appeals to a wider crowd, not just those looking for a pint of Guinness.
Precisely. You're getting a multi-layered experience. Drink, literature, Irish history, all in one place.
All right. But what about the visitor who's after something a bit less staged, a bit more connected to the local scene? Would you say Temple Bar falls short there?
It depends what they're after, really. While some pubs lean heavily into that tourist image, there are others that offer a more balanced experience.
Such
Well, Oliver St. John Gogarty's, for instance. You've got award-winning food alongside traditional music sessions.
Okay, so it's a more well-rounded cultural experience.
I'd say so. And then you've got the Keys, the Old Storehouse, the Palace Bar. Each one has a slightly different atmosphere and crowd.
So even within Temple Bar itself, there's a spectrum of experiences to be had.
Yes, exactly. It's not a monolithic thing, is it?
Right. So for someone planning their visit, what would you say is the biggest misconception about Temple Bar?
I'd say the assumption that it's all just a tourist trap. Yes, some pubs lean into that, but others offer something more nuanced. You could argue that Temple Bar actually reflects modern Irish culture in a way.
A blend of the traditional and the globally influenced.
Yeah, I think so. And it's very accessible, easy to get to from the airport.
A gateway to Dublin for many visitors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's say someone wants to experience Dublin's pub scene, but they're looking for something a bit less touristy. Where else would you recommend?
Well, you're spoilt for choice in Dublin. What about Ryan's of Parkgate Street? Beautiful Victorian pub with modern touches.
Nice. A blend of old and new. What else?
Well, there's the Long Hall, one of Dublin's oldest pubs. Dates back to 1766.
1766. That's amazing. So much history.
Yeah. And then there's John Kavanagh, or the Gravediggers, as it's known.
The Gravediggers. Why is it called that?
Well, it's near Glasnevin Cemetery. Story goes that gravediggers used to frequent it after work.
Ah, that makes sense. A pub with a story. Brilliant. What about the music? We know Temple Bar is saturated with it, but what about these other pubs?
A lot of them offer traditional music, but in a more intimate setting. The Cobblestone, for instance. Family run, known for its authentic traditional music.
So if you're seeking that authentic experience,
The Cobblestone's a good shout.
it seems like Dublin has a pub for every taste then. From the curated energy of Temple Bar to the quiet charm of a historic local.
Absolutely. And understanding that variety is key to deciding whether Temple Bar is worth it for you?
Because ultimately there's no definitive answer, is there?
Not really. It depends what you're looking for in a pub experience.
Right. But let's be honest, a lot of travelers do end up in Temple Bar, despite the criticisms.
Yeah.
What would you say is the main draw that keeps it so popular?
Well, it's the concentration of everything in one place, isn't it?
You mean?
The sheer number of pubs, the live music, 7 days a week, and it's just so easy to get to.
So convenience plays a big role.
Definitely. It's like a sampler platter of Irish pub culture.
Yeah. Even if it's not always the most authentic representation.
That's true. But there's also that element of spectacle,
The crowds, the music.
Yeah, it's a sensory overload. And don't forget, Bono and U2 own the Clarence Hotel there.
Oh, that's right, the celebrity connection.
Yeah.
That definitely adds to the allure for
That
some.
does, doesn't it?
But even with all of this, we can't ignore the cost. Is Temple Bar really as overpriced as people say?
You'll probably pay a premium there compared to other areas.
That's fair.
But you're paying for that prime location, the sheer number of options, and that vibrant atmosphere.
So it's about weighing up the cost against the overall experience.
Exactly. For some, that Temple Bar experience is worth every penny.
It's a personal choice.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got that tourist versus local debate. We've looked at some key attractions within Temple Bar itself. Anything else we should touch on?
Well, we haven't talked about the history of the area itself.
Oh, right. Tell me about it.
Well, it's actually named after Sir William Temple. He was a provost of Trinity College.
Ah, interesting. I didn't know that.
His house and gardens were in that area, so there's a link to academia, to Dublin's intellectual past.
It's fascinating how a place so often associated with revelry has these ties to scholarship. Adds another layer to our understanding.
Doesn't it? It reminds us that Temple Bar wasn't always a tourist hub. It's evolved over time.
So it's more nuanced than simply calling it a tourist trap.
Exactly.
Right. So I think the takeaway here is that Temple Bar offers a particular type of experience.
Yes, and whether that appeals to you is a matter of personal preference.
It's about knowing what you're looking for and deciding if Temple Bar fits the bill.
And if you're looking for more insights into Ireland's hidden gems and you're planning your trip,
Our Love Ireland travel newsletter is a great resource.
it is packed with tips and insider information.
Sign up, you won't regret it.
Let us help you discover the true heart of Ireland. So we've talked about Temple Bar in general terms, but for those who are intrigued and want to experience it firsthand, where would you recommend they start?
Yeah, let's get specific. Which pubs should be on their must-visit list?
Well, we've already mentioned the Temple Bar pub itself. It's a good starting point just to see what all the fuss is about.
Okay, but what makes it stand out from all the other pubs?
It's more than just the whiskey selection. It's the sheer size of the place. It's got multiple rooms and levels. You can actually find a quiet corner even when it's busy.
So even amidst the crowds, you can have a more intimate experience if you want to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something to keep in mind about Temple Bar in general. It's not just one big pub. It's a whole collection of individual pubs, each with its own character.
Right, it's a bit of a microcosm of the city itself. All right, so the Temple Bar pub is on the list. What else?
Oliver St. John Gogarty's is another popular one. The multi-level layout and the live music create that lively atmosphere people associate with the area.
And they're known for their food too, aren't they?
Yeah, really good traditional Irish dishes, so you can have a proper meal there as well.
Makes sense. What about the Quays? We haven't talked about that one yet.
The Quays is great for the decor. Very visually striking, with stained glass windows, dark wood, traditional feel.
Ah, so playing into that romanticized image of Ireland.
Definitely. The aesthetics are a big part of the appeal. It's about evoking a certain feeling, transporting you to another time.
Okay, so we've got the Temple Bar pub, Gogarty's, the Quays, any others?
The Palace Bar is worth a visit for its history. Used to be a favorite hangout for writers and journalists.
Ah, so it's a bit more of a literary vibe.
Exactly. And they've revived the tradition of bottling their own whiskey there. So you can try something unique.
Interesting. So there's a bit of something for everyone within Temple Bar then. But what if our listener wants to venture a little further afield? Are there any other pubs nearby that offer a similar kind of atmosphere?
Well, just outside of the main Temple Bar area is the Brazen Head. Claims to be the oldest pub in Dublin, dating back to 1198.
Wow, 1198, seriously?
Well, the building itself might not be that old, but the pub's history is well documented. Definitely got that old world atmosphere.
So it's a good mix of history and that lively pub energy.
Yeah, popular with both tourists and locals.
Okay, that sounds good. What about the church? I've heard that's a bit different.
The church is a former church that's been converted into a bar and restaurant. Quite a unique setting.
I bet the acoustics are fantastic for live music.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They have music and DJ sets there, especially on weekends.
All right, so we've got the Brazen Head for history buffs and the church for those who appreciate a more unconventional setting. Any other hidden gems we should know about?
O'Donoghue's, near St. Stephen's Green. Another historic pub with a strong connection to traditional Irish music.
I've heard of that one.
It was a favorite haunt of the Dubliners.
Oh, wow. The Dubliners. That's pretty special. So even beyond Temple Bar, there's plenty of choice for that lively pub atmosphere.
There is. But coming back to Temple Bar itself, We've talked about the cost. Any tips for experiencing it without breaking the bank?
Yeah, good point. It does have that reputation for being a bit pricey.
A lot of pubs have early bird specials or happy hour deals, so it's worth checking those out.
Well, bit of planning can save you some money. What about the crowds? Any advice for someone who's not a fan of being packed in like a sardine?
Well, I'd say avoid the weekends if you can. Weekdays are usually quieter.
And probably best to avoid peak tourist season as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. But even if you do find yourself in a pub that's feeling a bit too crowded, just move on to the next one.
There are so many to choose from.
Exactly. It's about finding the right fit for your comfort level.
Okay, so that's good advice.
Mhm.
Now, let's talk about those alternative pubs we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
What makes them stand out from the Temple Bar experience?
The main difference is the atmosphere. It's more intimate, less about the spectacle, and more about genuine connection.
So it's about authenticity. Would you say that?
I think so. It feels less curated, less like a performance. You're more likely to chat with locals and get a sense of the real Dublin pub culture.
And is the music different?
Often, yes. The music in those alternative pubs tends to be more authentic, less polished.
So it's about experiencing traditional music in a raw form, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. You're witnessing the tradition as it's lived and breathed by the locals.
That makes sense. So it really boils down to what you're looking for in a pub experience. Do you want that high-energy, tourist-oriented atmosphere
Yeah.
or something more intimate and authentic?
Exactly. And there's no right or wrong answer.
It's about personal preference.
Exactly. Dublin's a fantastic city for pub enthusiasts because it caters to all tastes.
That's a great point. So we've covered both sides of the coin. The lively, tourist-centric pubs of Temple Bar and the quieter, more authentic alternatives. And the key takeaway, I think, is this. Do your research, figure out your priorities, and choose the experience that's right for you.
Exactly. And if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the choices, remember,
Our Love Ireland travel newsletter can help.
we can guide you towards the perfect pub experience for your tastes.
Sign up today and let us be your guide to Dublin's amazing pub scene. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? But I'm curious, what about the people? What's the vibe like in Temple Bar? Who do you actually find there?
Oh, it's a real mix of people. Tourists from everywhere you can imagine. But
Mhm.
you do also get Dubliners, especially if you go during the week or to those less touristy pubs.
So it's not just a tourist bubble.
Not entirely, no. And there's this shared kind of energy there, almost a camaraderie. Even if you're from different parts of the world, you're all sharing this experience of being in this iconic place.
Right. And you never know who you might bump into or what stories you'll hear.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes pubs so special, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's about that social connection.
It is. They're places for storytelling, for sharing experiences. And even though Temple Bar has that tourist reputation, it still taps into that element.
But what about those who are adamant that Temple Bar is nothing more than a tourist trap, that it's lacking in authenticity? What would you say to them?
Well, I think it's about looking beyond the surface. Yes, some pubs are definitely geared towards tourists, but there are others that offer a more genuine experience. And even in those tourist-focused pubs, there can be moments of real connection if you're open to it. It's about going in with an open mind and engaging with the space on its own terms.
So it's about recognizing that it is a tourist hub, but also acknowledging that authenticity can exist in unexpected places.
Absolutely. And these places are constantly evolving, aren't they?
What do you mean?
Tourist destinations, they change over time, shaped by the visitors, but also the locals who live and work there.
Right, so Temple Bar today is different from Temple Bar 20 years ago.
Exactly. It's not a static thing.
Okay, so for someone planning a trip to Dublin, what's your advice? Embrace Temple Bar, avoid it completely, or somewhere in between?
I always say, go and see it for yourself. Form your own opinion. Don't just go on what other people say. Walk the streets, pop into a few pubs, get a feel for the place.
It's about trusting your gut and having an open mind.
Yes. And even if Temple Bar isn't quite your cup of tea, Dublin has so many other amazing pubs to discover.
Absolutely. There really is something for everyone. Well, we've explored a lot in this episode, haven't we?
We have.
From the history and the attractions to the atmosphere and the cost. Hopefully, our listeners now have a better understanding of what Temple Bar is all about and can decide for themselves whether it's worth a visit.
I hope so.
And remember, if you're looking for more in-depth guidance on planning your Dublin pub adventure, be sure to check out our Love Ireland travel newsletter. It's packed with insider tips and recommendations.
Everything you need to discover the magic of Dublin's pub scene.
Sign up today and let us be your guide.